The question on everyone's mind: what happened to Nike suddenly? It's June 2024 and Nike is collapsing. Meanwhile, Adidas, its stock shot up by 19%, while Nike's crashed by 21%. The question on everyone's mind: what happened to Nike suddenly? Is the golden age of just do it over? Can Nike ever bounce back? This isn't just a headline, it's a business earthquake. Because Nike didn't just lose money, it lost shelf space, customer mindshare, and retailer loyalty. Hi everyone, in this video, we'll exactly break down how this happened. What exactly caused Nike's collapse? How competitors like Adidas, Hoka, and On took advantage. And the vital lessons it holds for entrepreneurs, professionals, and anyone building something big. To understand what exactly happened, let's rewind a bit. It's 2018, Nike is everywhere. That famous swoosh logo, you see it on sneakers, gym bags, caps, and even the hoodie you wore last weekend. And if you wanted a fresh pair of Air Jordans, you didn't have to hunt. You just walk into a mall or your nearby sports shop, and there they were, no drama. It just felt like Nike had mastered the game. But behind the scenes, the game was changing itself. And here's the thing, it wasn't just only happening with Nike, it was happening with you too, even if you didn't notice it back then. Think about it. A few years earlier, you'd go to a store, try on different shoes, maybe bargain a little with the shopkeeper. But by the late 2010s, shopping had shifted to your sofa. You'd be lying in bed, scrolling Instagram, and see a new sneaker drop. And within 2 taps, it's ordered. There was no traffic, no long-standing queues, and not even bhaiya 10% discount dena. The shoes just land at your doorstep. For you, this was pure convenience. But for brands like Nike, this was a revolution. For them, it was like a distribution channel shift, meaning the way products reached customers was changing forever. Here's why that mattered. Earlier, if Nike sold you 15,000 rupees pair of Jordans through a store like Foot Locker, the locker would keep 30 to 50% of that money. That's around 5,000 to 7,500 going to the shop, not Nike. But if you bought directly from Nike's website or app, then there's no middleman, no revenue split, and Nike keeps almost all of it. And even something more valuable, that's first-party data. Your name, your shoe size, your buying habits, your buying patterns, in what month you buy those shoes. So inside Nike's office, one question kept echoing: why give away half when we can keep all of it? And that's when Nike made the biggest decision. They switched to D2C model, that's direct to consumer model, which means selling straight to you through their websites, apps, or even their own stores, and slowly cut back on depending on outside retailers like Foot Locker or Macy's. In short, Nike decided to take control of the entire value chain, from designing the shoe to putting it in your hands without anyone in between. On the outside, it looked bold. More Nike stores, stronger website, exclusive app-only sneaker drops, and even when COVID hit, locking people indoors, it actually looked like a genius move. But the real question, were these moves securing Nike's future? Or were they quietly, secretly damaging the foundation of Nike? Let's go a little more deeper into this. See, Nike was making more profits than ever. The D2C strategy was really working great in terms of better profit margins, more customer data, and complete control over the sales. But here's a silent question nobody asked for. What happened to the retailers who built Nike's empire? I'm talking about old retailers, shopping mall chains, and regional distributors. These were the same shops many of us first bought on Nike shoes. Suddenly, they felt ignored, abandoned, ghosted, as we'd say today. And you know what? They didn't sit quietly. They moved on. They partnered with newer, hungrier brands like Hoka, On, and Brooks. So now imagine, a customer walks into a local sports store expecting to see Nike, and instead, they are greeted with something fresh, bold, different designs from these newer brands. Meanwhile, Nike had become too comfortable with its classics: Air Jordans, Air Force Ones, Dunks. Their innovation pipeline, the steady flow of new product ideas and launches, had actually slowed down. And here's a strategy lesson. In fast-moving industries, product differentiation, that is creating something unique that stands out in the market, is what keeps you ahead. But Nike was relying too much on nostalgia rather than fresh differentiation. while younger customers wanted something new, something fresh, something Gen Z. And here's how things started to shift slowly. A sales associate in one of those stores says, "Sir, just try these new shoes. They'll be flying off the shelves." And you know what? Here's exactly where psychological shift happened. Those sales recommendations led to one-time try-on. And that try-on, once posted on social media, sparked a trend. And soon enough, that trend became the norm. Because, let's face it, what people hear the most, try the most, see the most, they eventually start to trust that thing even more. Meanwhile, Wall Street, meaning the big investors and the financial decision makers in the US, they began sensing that Nike's big D2C plan might not be foolproof. They spotted the problem. When you cut out those retail partners, you lose your distribution moat, which is competitive advantage you get from having strong, widespread distribution channels that rivals can't easily copy. Because earlier, if Nike shoe wasn't performing well, wasn't selling much, retail partners would still push it. Why? Because they have shelf space to fill and sales target to hit. So of course, even a weak product would move. But in the D2C world, if customers are not buying from Nike.com or Nike stores, that entire stock is sitting right up there. No one is going to help you clear it. And here's the other challenge. D2C isn't cheap. Nike had poured billions into fancy flagship stores, advanced technology and supply chain upgrades. And these are not just one-time cost, they are recurring fixed cost. Expenses that keep happening month after month, whether sales are high or low. So when sales are down, those costs end up eating your profits. And all these factors converged in Nike's second quarter of 2024. When Nike held its earnings call, the numbers stunned analysts. Sales were down 10% in the quarter, a far bigger drop than expected. The day after Nike revealed its disappointed earnings, investors reacted swiftly and brutally. Nike's stock price dropped sharply, and just like that, $28 billion in market value vanished in a single day. But more importantly, will Nike ever revive back? Well, the short answer is yes. Nike is actively working on a comeback, focusing on regaining market share and revitalizing its brand image. This includes strategies like re-entering platforms like Amazon, strengthening wholesale partnerships, and emphasizing sports and athlete-focused initiatives. And historically, Nike has demonstrated resilience. It had dips before and it bounced back stronger. And of course, for this time will only tell. But let's hope for the best. Now let's move to 3 big lessons from Nike's $27 billion collapse. Number 1, omni-channel wins. Selling both online and offline expands your reach. Cutting out retail partners may give quick profits, but then you lose visibility and presence. Number 2, very important, keep innovating. Never get complacent about your product. Nike leaned too much on old classics, while rivals launched fresh designs that Gen Z loved. In business, nostalgia sells once, but innovation sells forever. Number 3, balance short-term versus long-term. Of course, direct sales gave Nike's better margins, but by pulling back from multi-brand retail stores, Nike became harder to find in smaller cities and casual shopping trips. It's just like cutting a mango tree in order to sell all fruits at once. That's true that you'll make quick money today, but what about the next year? No trees, no mangoes. Business strategy needs both quick wins and long-term brand health. If you focus only on short-term gains, you might unknowingly damage the very foundation that keeps you winning over decades. And that is it for today. Thanks for watching, and remember, every story has lessons waiting to be discovered. See you in the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Bye-bye.